From the discovery of sprawling subterranean otherworlds to the startling second phases that completely turned the tables in so many of its boss fights, 2022's Elden Ring was a mesmerizing action RPG adventure that surprised players at every turn. Now, more than 2 years later, it appears that developer From Software isn't done with pulling the rug out from under the feet of its fan base just yet, with the surprise reveal of Elden Ring Nightreign, a standalone co-op spin-off that takes the cautious dungeon crawls of Elden Ring and turbocharges them into propulsive slash and dash speedruns. After spending some 6 hours of hands-on time with this bold new spin on From Software's own Souls-like formula, I can confirm that Nightreign is shaping up to be something truly unique. If Elden Ring was one of 2022's biggest chart-topping hits, then Nightreign would appear to be its dance floor-filling remix, chopped up, intensified in beats per minute, and designed to both excite fans of the original and broaden its appeal to the masses. Now, unfortunately, because it was such an early build of the game that I played, I wasn't able to capture any footage, even though it was running great on PlayStation 5. So I apologize for the generic footage I'll be using here, and also for my generic face. Anyway, here's how Nightreign breaks down. Imagine stepping back into the opening area from the original game, only nothing in the landscape seems to be where you remember it. Also, there are 3 of you now, and everything seems to be happening at a much higher tempo. That's Nightreign in a nutshell. You squad up with 2 other players at the start of each round, get dropped into a densely packed alternate reality chunk of Limgrave that has both its enemy types and structures randomly shuffled around at the beginning of each session, and it's up to you and your squad mates to build up from your lowly level 1 character's status as fast as possible by harvesting runes and earning Destiny-style loot drops as you slash and dash through every enemy-filled camp that you come across. So, what's the big rush? Well, each session of Nightreign is structured as a 3-day cycle, with each in-game day taking about 15 minutes to complete. At the start of the first day, you can pretty much pick any direction to plot your whirling path of destruction along, but as day approaches, night the space you can operate in narrows, and you're liable to be killed by acid-like rain should you find yourself caught for too long beyond the perimeter of the rapidly shrinking circle on the map, known as the Ring of Rain. In that regard, Nightreign is a bit like Fortnite, only with more medieval forts and knights and considerably less TikTok dances. Once the Ring of Rain reaches its smallest diameter at the end of the day, a major boss fight is triggered. Like the rest of Nightreign's enemies, these end-of-day bosses are always randomized, and during my repeat runs, I experienced clashes with familiar returning foes like a draconian tree sentinel, as well as some brand new nasties like the Centipede, a towering, twisting swarm of disgusting limbs, prone to detaching its body parts in an attempt to divide itself and conquer my crew. With the day 1 boss dealt with, day 2 begins and the Ring of Rain rescinds, allowing your squad to take a breath, regroup, and then resume ransacking the map for upgrades in preparation for the more challenging foes to come at the end of days 2 and 3. It's a structure that allows for a gradual build of tension before a palpable sense of accomplishment and release with each boss felled. Over time, my squad mates and I became a well-oiled machine as far as getting the balance right between beelining for churches to snatch up valuable HP flasks and taking down the more major overworld enemies like dragons and hippos in order to get maximum XP boosts for buck before the map was cast back into darkness. We were also able to eventually settle upon the best combination of heroes for our group. You see, Nightreign doesn't feature the lengthy list of generic character classes that the original Elden Ring did, and players won't have to Google the difference between vague-sounding archetypes like the Prisoner and Wretch when they first hop into play. Instead, Nightreign offers 8 different heroes to choose from, each with very clearly identified strengths and weaknesses, in order to make it as easy to jump into as possible. 4 were playable in the preview build. Wilder is an all-rounder hero type with a good balance between speed and attack power. Guardian is a burly tank type with heavy attacks and increased damage resistance. Duchess is a nimble type with fast attacks and a killer quick-step ability. And Recluse is a mage type with ranged magical attacks. Additionally, each character features a unique skill and ultimate attack that both operate on cooldown timers. Wilder is able to use his hookshot skill to either reel in smaller enemies like Scorpion in Mortal Kombat, or to quickly zip past the swinging arms of a major boss in order to sneak a few strikes in from behind. Guardian is able to conjure up a mini tornado to knock swarms of enemies off their feet, while Recluse can put a marker on an enemy so that every time that enemy is attacked, the damage is siphoned into boosts for her own HP. These unique abilities are all extremely useful in their own right, but finding ways to combine them with the special moves of your squad mates is key to surviving Nightreign's toughest enemy encounters. One strategy that my squad grew to rely on quite heavily was to unleash a damaging ultimate attack on an enemy such as Guardian's swooping dive bomb, then immediately follow it up with Duchess's restage skill, which basically creates an instant replay of the last attack landed and allows you to double the total amount of damage inflicted. It's in finding killer combinations of moves such as these that the co-op focus of Nightreign really shines. And after multiple failed attempts, my squad was finally able to progress through to the third day of the cycle, which climaxed in a fight against a snarling, Cerberus-like beast called Gladius, which forced my team to coordinate and queue up skills and ultimate attacks with painstaking precision in order to overcome it. Gladius is just the first of 8 major bosses to take down in Nightreign, each with their own 3-day cycle leading up to them. In addition to the randomization of enemy types and structures, further wrinkles will be introduced into each boss cycle, such as live volcanoes and forests full of rot, in an effort to prevent the landscape from ever growing too predictable. That's along with random events like meteor strikes, swarms of giant ants to fend off, and the surprise invasion of powerful tormentors like Margit the Fell Omen in an attempt to impede your progress. In addition to the approachability of its roster of playable characters, Nightreign has polished up a lot of Elden Ring's more abrasive edges to make it a far more friction-free experience. A new wall jump move allows you to quickly hop up and over steep sections of the terrain, while the removal of any fall damage means you can lunge off cliffs or down dark holes without pausing to study your surroundings for safe platforms. You only need to walk near a site of grace to top up your health and flasks, and if you want to spend some runes to level up, you just button mash through pages of auto leveling that best suits the base traits of your chosen character, rather than having to agonize over whether you should allocate a point to faith or dexterity, for example. It all gives each session the feeling of being shuttled along in an intense speedrun, and you can get around even faster by using spectral hawks to vault across great distances of the map. Death is not necessarily the end in Nightreign either. If you find yourself down, you have a near-death meter that appears above you, and your squad mates must attack you while you crawl along the ground until the meter is reduced and you can return to the fray. It may sound slightly odd to basically kick a friend while they're down, but it's a system that works quite well, particularly since you can use ranged attacks like magic or crossbows to revive a down squad mate from a distance without the risk of putting yourself in harm's way. Should all 3 of you be wiped out at once, it's the end of the session, and you must restart day 1 with everyone back at level 1. So you need to stay on your toes in order to keep the rest of your squad on their feet whenever possible. While there's no doubt that elements of it are inspired by the likes of Destiny and Diablo 4, it needs to be said that Elden Ring Nightreign is not a live service game. Once you buy it, you get access to the complete package, and there are no battle passes or microtransactions to contend with. It can also be played in single player should you wish to stay offline, with enemy health pools that scale down so that it's not too overwhelming for solo players. Although, curiously, there are currently no plans to allow players to play in pairs. As someone who has sunk hundreds of hours into Elden Ring, both in the original 2022 game and this year's Shadow of the Erdtree DLC, I can confidently say that From Software is onto something truly spectacular with Nightreign. Cutting throats at breakneck speed with a pair of friends in tow has been a consistently exhilarating experience so far, and especially gratifying when you work together to topple its toughest bosses using each character's special abilities in tandem. Assuming the developers can throw enough randomized elements to keep each 3-day assault feeling fresh, then Elden Ring Nightreign could well provide an exciting change of pace for existing fans and an enticingly accessible entry point for newcomers when it launches sometime in 2025. So, what do you think? Are you excited for Elden Ring Nightreign, or do you prefer things slow and steady rather than rough and ready? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to read my full impressions and get your fix for all things Elden Ring Nightreign on IGN.
Band together and prepare to claim the life of the Night Lord.